The Hogsty is brought to you by TicketClub.com, your one-stop shop for live events nationwide. Whether you're looking for game, theater, or live performance tickets, don't sweat it. TicketClub.com has you covered. So make sure you're going there for all your live entertainment needs, and make sure you're clicking over to them from the banner at the top of thehogsty.com.
By fans, for fans, the Hogsty. And now, here's your host, Sean Conti.
Hey everybody, and welcome back to the Hogsty, DC's unofficial leading source for all things Redskins. My name's Sean, and Alex Guice, Steve Thomas, and Jamal Forrest are all here for the show. How you guys doing today?
Well, I'm happy. Caps won the first game, since we're recording Saturday. Friday night, they got a big win. I was at the Valor game, and they were putting
Let's go Caps, baby.
The loudest the fans got at the arena was when they had the Caps up on the Jumbotron. Other than that...
Well, the real question is, were the fans... Yeah, well, I mean, the real question is, were the fans watching the Valor game or the Caps game?
Well, they didn't put the game on the Jumbotron if there was play going on. It was only during breaks and stuff.
Because if they had just left it on and left it run, I think you'd have everybody focus on the Jumbotron and not the field.
Absolutely.
Oh, yeah.
Well,
I'm trying to become a hockey fan.
Yeah.
Be more entertaining.
I'm not a big hockey guy, but
I actually watched the first 2.5 periods yesterday. I've never think I would have done that before. It was just weird. But then when I just seen them running the score up, I was like, all right, yeah, I can change the channel now.
I'm with you.
See, I mean, hockey for me has the same problem soccer does, which is namely that I don't understand the strategy of it, at all. And so I'm looking at it and I don't really know what's going on. But I think it's much more exciting than soccer.
Well, it's fast.
It is. It's so fast.
It's an emotional roller coaster, especially if it's a tight game. I think the only thing that's universal to me when it comes to hockey is understanding good defense and knowing when a player is fast. That's the only thing I know when it comes to hockey.
I watched the Game 7 of the Caps and who was it? Was it Winnipeg? Last week. The last series they put in.
You're talking about the Caps?
Penguin. Okay, yeah. I watched that and the game was into overtime, and then I saw that NBC switched over to the Nashville Predators game, and so I was like, and I turned it off, only to find out that I guess they came back to the overtime period. So I was a little bit irritated.
Of course.
Myself.
Good job, NBC, switching away from an overtime of a final game.
For the start of another game, I didn't understand that.
Well, it's NBC not knowing how sports works.
Because they've never done it before.
Well, it's sad because the Capitals are probably one of our better teams here in Washington, so we should probably know more about them than we do.
The truth of the matter is? The truth of the matter is 3 of 4 teams are good.
Yeah.
That's the truth of the matter.
Yeah, depending on what your definition of good
to
is.
Be competitive.
Right.
I'm not a Nationals fan, but the Nationals are a good team, competitive, going to the playoffs.
Absolutely.
The Caps are currently deep in the playoffs. The Wizards are consistently a solid middle-of-the-pack playoff team.
Right.
Yeah, the Capitals always blow it, though. The Nationals seem to have a habit of blowing it, too, these days.
That's the DC thing.
Hey, we broke the
You're right.
71 season streak of no team appearing in a conference final, though.
Yeah, right.
Yay, DC.
That's true. Hey, that means something. Well, maybe we're working our way up to that with the Redskins, too. So maybe that's a perfect segue. We are officially at the start of minicamp. So I don't know how excited that makes you guys. It's not exactly the most... Yeah, exactly. A very lukewarm yay is what it gets for me, too. But, hey, it's exciting. It's another step in the offseason, and it's kicked off. We get to see these rookies in action, or at least some people do. So what are the big notes you guys have heard out of minicamp? I've heard a lot about Guice.
Yeah, Guice has been a big note. And then the safety from Virginia was another big note.
Quinn Blanding.
Yeah, Quinn Blanding. And, of course, the biggest note that we just found out is that there's a Nick Conti who's also from Virginia. So Sean needs to DM, somebody in the PR office and see if he can get that Conti jersey eventually.
I'm a pretty smooth talker. I could probably pose as a family member and get on the phone with them.
And then you'd get us kicked out of Redskins media forever, so please don't do that.
Probably true. But hey, we'd have an exclusive scoop about Nick Conti, man. So
the fact that he's in minicamp, that's our scoop.
That's
a big
scoop. Yeah,
he's a punter, right?
Yeah,
Isn't he
punter.
a punter, Alex?
Yep.
So in other words, he's never going to make the team. We're never going to hear from him.
Well,
ever
he might
again
make it
after
to
this.
a preseason game. Sometimes they keep 2 punters for preseason.
Well, we already have another second
right.
punter in
I
Sam
forgot.
Irwin Hill, so
Yeah.
he's a third punter.
Yeah.
Oh, I didn't know we had 2.
He's a decoy.
Mm-hmm.
This is our decoy punter. So how about this? Because I think a lot of people probably don't quite understand. I mean, people hear mini camp, people hear training camp, OTAs. What exactly goes on
This is
at
tryout.
mini camp,
This is
guys?
tryout
What are
right
these
now.
rookies doing
Let's be clear.
right
This
now?
is a rookie mini camp.
So,
Yeah.
and there's a huge amount of undrafted guys that are participating as well. I mean, there's still a lot of tryout guys that probably a lot of people, including Nick Conti, I guess, that we just mentioned, that people have never heard of yet. What is the likelihood that one of these guys really
They
shows
always
in a-
sign some. They sign 1 or 2 of them every year. They're going to sign 1 or 2 of them this year.
Right.
There's like maybe 20,
Seeing
maybe
the field,
20,
though.
25 camp invitees. And then we have 13 undrafted free agents they signed who are there.
Right.
Then the draft picks are there. And then there are a couple veterans, like Fish Smithson is there, Andre Pipkins is there, just kind of getting some time and getting some reps. So but it's basically tryout weekend.
And I think it's actually more this year that they had uninvited or unsigned guys invited.
Yeah.
46 was what the press
Oh,
release
is that
said.
the number?
Yeah.
46?
Yeah.
Okay. I mean, it's a lot, and they'll sign a couple. They'll find somebody who's worth it. I mean, the problem is for these guys is that the team is at, I believe, 90 now.
Mm-hmm.
If we're counting, I've been unsure about Tyler Catalina's status because various sources have him listed various ways. But if you count him, we're at 90. At least I think, because Sean Welsh is, I guess, gone. But
Right.
we'll talk about that later.
Right.
So what's going to happen is these guys are going to have to outplay somebody who's signed. That's the problem with the undrafted free agent.
Right.
I think Quinn Blanding is the big name out of these.
But he's
from
technically
Virginia.
signed, so he's part of the 90, right?
No, he's not. He's not part of. He was not. Was he?
I think he was.
Hold on. Give me a second.
It's a fluid situation.
It's a fluid
folks. Just gotta
situation.
Make sure we've got
I
the
forgot
up-to-date
to
information.
open my salary cap chart. Is the main reason for my hesitation here. But while we're talking about it, I mean, the other guy who's really been big news is Trey Quinn.
Right.
The draft pick. I mean, I think, Quinn Blanding was one of the signed ones, so that's my mistake. But so he's on the roster. But Trey Quinn is very, very clearly Jay Gruden's long lost son. This is a guy who came about when Jay had a weak moment in college or something like that, and that is the reason for his existence. Because I can just tell that he is going to be the new Ryan Grant.
Mm-hmm.
What the reports we hear about Trey Quinn are that he's got really great patterns. Great guy. He apparently brought donuts to the press corps.
Right.
On Friday, which good move
Using
by
that
Trey.
Mr. Relevant money.
Yeah. So I think he's the guy we're going to hear a lot about. And plus, they didn't draft another wide receiver either. So I mean, he's it.
Right. Yeah, although there are, I'm not going to count them all, but probably another 10 wide receivers that were unsigned invites to rookie camp.
Oh yeah. And they signed a bunch of undrafted free agents too. And we've got 10. We've got 12 of them signed right now.
Right.
Yeah. So I'm kind of glad you brought up Trey Quinn, because for someone who's Mr. Irrelevant, it doesn't necessarily seem to be the fairest way to categorize him this year. I've heard a lot of good things, I guess really just about his speed. But I think he's kind of an intriguing pickup here. He seems to be one of the better Mr. Irrelevants of the last few years. I mean, for whatever that, matters.
I mean, we'll see. Go ahead, Jamal.
No, I was gonna say I agree. It's kind of weird because college students, like, for you to get drafted, you do have something good going for you. But for a person of his stature, a person who led the NCAA in receptions, person who played at LSU and transferred to SMU, he has a background and he has the talent to compete in the SEC. But seeing as how he went to LSU, we know LSU don't really they have terrible quarterbacks and they hardly are efficient. They're nowhere near efficient in the pass game. So it's like you have the talent to play in the SEC. You go to SMU and you do the things that you do there. Your year before going to the NFL, it's impressive. So it's I wouldn't even say it's weird, to be honest with you. More so just that it's a good value pick because he was one pick away from going undrafted, and it's kind of weird. That's the weird part. He was one pick away from going undrafted.
See, thank you, Jamal. Steve's over here pulling the Doc Walker. I don't know. We'll find out when the season starts. Who knows if he'll be good or not? It doesn't matter.
Well,
yes, you
I'm
did.
About to say, just the biggest thing with him is just more so seeing him when like training camp. That's when we'll get our first look at him per se. But right now, it's just on the surface. It's just interesting to see that he was the last pick.
Yeah,
I think Trey's problem is that he really only had 1 year where he did anything. You know, he spent 2 years at LSU and 1 year at SMU, but remember that he had to sit out the year. So he was an academic senior at SMU that year. But still, he would have had 1 extra year in college. And I don't know anything about his family situation or anything like that, but I think he would have been better served by spending another year at SMU and putting up another year of stats. Because I think teams might be afraid he's a 1 year wonder in a mediocre conference, and that's why he dropped so far.
Mm-hmm.
You know, he's not putting up these numbers at Ohio State.
No.
You know, it's SMU, and that's part of it.
Well,
but,
is SMU in the Big 12 now? Where are they?
No. They're in, like, the Mid-America Conference, I think.
Oh, okay.
Uh-oh.
It's the American Conference.
Oh, they're in the American Athletic Conference. I should know that.
Yeah.
But, okay.
But that's where they are. I mean, so it's his problem is he had 1 year of great in a mid-major conference, or, you know, something even lower than a mid-major conference.
No, that's
his
actually
problem.
one of the high mid-majors right now.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, fair enough. But still, I mean, that's the problem with Trey Quinn.
Yeah.
It makes sense. It makes complete sense. I sure hope he
By
can
the way,
bring something to us.
A little fun fact about Mr. Irrelevant: we've only had one other Mr. Irrelevant ever on the Redskins.
Now, see, that kind of surprises me. I don't know why, but that kind of surprises me. Who was the other one?
Matt Elliott. We drafted him in 1992, so after we won the Super Bowl. You know, makes sense. Yeah. Played 1 year as a...
Okay.
Somebody needs to do a study of Mr. Irrelevance and see what happens to all these guys and how many of them may have a long-term career in the NFL.
Like, literally, I was just scanning some articles about it, and it's like some of the biggest successes are guys who played special teams for 3 years, and that's about it. You know? Yeah.
God,
well,
that's
maybe
sad.
old Trey Quinn, you know, since he has the, you know, father-son relationship with our coach, can buck that trend.
Yeah, hopefully.
Yeah, there you go. Break the mold. Anything else we want to mention about minicamp before we start our ongoing position group breakdown series? Anything else you guys heard? I mean, there's not that much we can possibly say about it, right?
now.
I mean, it's a little thin on news, but I mean, it's worthy of mentioning.
All we can say is the guys who stuck out: Trey Quinn, Troy Apke. John Kima had some good things to say about Apke. He said, you know, his coverage skills a little lacking, but he's got a tremendous amount of speed.
Mm-hmm.
You know, it looks like a legit special teams guy. Quinn Blanding is the other guy I heard good things about. So those three guys are players to watch. You know, and of course they're all on the roster. So
yeah, yep.
We'll see.
I mean, I don't think most of these guys. There's a reason we're not going to read the 46 names of people they invited because you're never going to hear those names again if we read them.
And that would be incredibly boring to read 46 names out.
Yeah.
All right. Well, let's move on then in that case. So we have what do you guys want to do first? Because we can do our position group breakdown now. We can also talk about some of these potential roster updates with retirement.
Well, let's do that. Let's do that.
First was a part of the rookie minicamp, so
yeah.
So let's go ahead and do it then. Sean Laval is a huge. I mean, we're the biggest Sean Laval fans in the whole world on this show here on the Hogstye. Devastating to hear about another injury. How does this news hit you guys?
I mean, it hits me as a necessity. And that was before the Ari Kwanjo injury. Ari Kwanjo was injured, if you guys hadn't heard about that.
Yep.
His status is a little bit up in the air, but we think...
Just realized I said Laval.
Right.
Okay, well, I mean, we signed Laval, too, so
Sorry.
either one needs to be mentioned.
They're both news,
as far as Laval goes, we needed him before Ari Kwanjo's injury. I think the team...
Now we definitely...
Yeah, I mean... I think he was always the plan B or plan C or whatever plan we're up to at guard. You know, if the draft didn't work, if free agency didn't work, Laval was always going to be there. He's not as bad as you guys say he is out there. I know there's, you know, a significant number of you hate Sean Laval.
He's just the butt of the jokes.
Well,
You're right.
Well, he's
really
a good run blocker. He's had limitations in the pass pro, and he's been injured a lot. That's his problem.
I think the injury is really the biggest issue. You know, like I don't think he ever makes it through more than half a season. You know,
no.
Like he will be a decent guard for us for 5 games, and then he'll probably be hurt.
And we just don't need that, considering what happened to us along that line last year.
So in the 1 year, I think he played the full season was 16, but he still played it hurt. So it's kind of like, more. I would say like 15, 16. I can't remember first. I can't really remember 16, but I know he played a good portion of the games, but he was playing on a bad leg or something like that. So he had.
If we want to talk about the future and what's going to happen, I think the team is going to open the spot up to competition. We still don't know really what Laval's contract was. Mm-hmm. It's presumably, I would think it would be short term, 1 or 2 years at most. Probably not huge, mid-level money, not huge money. But I think they'd be silly not to open up competition at the spot, to see who's best to start. Tyan Secchi, Laval, and some of these other guys.
And Christensen.
Kyle
Caley.
Kalis.
In the third. Why not?
Christensen is not a guard.
Nor is Nseki, and Laval is really just the walking dead. So
Nseki has more ability.
Yeah.
I mean, we talked about this before the show. I mean, there's a lot of O-line experts out there who think that Nseki can do it. What I've heard about Jaron Christensen, I'm not an O-line expert. I'll play one on TV. Is that Christensen is pretty limited to tackle.
Yeah.
He's a tackle. He's just not a guard. Whereas Nseki might be able to do it.
I'm just saying, if we're opening it up, I'm going to open it up to anybody who I think could possibly be close to 300 pounds at this point. That's how bad off we are.
Well, here's the biggest thing, though.
You're not wrong.
That position. And it's kind of similar to, I want to say, was it 2016? Yeah, it was 2016 with the defensive line. We kind of figured we'll just go afloat. We'll let our edge rushers and secondary do the job, and we'll worry about defensive line another day. And they went in there with it's crazy. It's only 2 years ago, and I can't remember who the starters were, but it wasn't impressive. You had Chris Baker, Ziggy Hood, and somebody else, but it just wasn't impressive at all. And people felt like that in the offseason. Like they was thinking like, what are you doing? Just letting the position float like that, and you'll you had to go a little bit harder that offseason, and you chose not to. It's kind of like the same thing with left guard this year. You had your backup plan all along. You knew you wanted Sean Laval back if the circumstances were right. You brought Sean Laval back. All right, Quandre just gets hurt. He's likely done for the season. No word yet. It's not confirmed. At the same time, there's an injury right there too. So now you're limited again, and you're going into training camp soon with one former starter who's likely projected to start this time, having competition with Tyan Secchi. I don't think Jaron is going to be competition at guard, but like that's really all you have, and you're just going to say we're going to make it work. The good thing about guard is that it's not that significant of a position on the offensive line, but at the same time, if that guard can get worked 3 or 4 times out of the game, you're in trouble. Your quarterback's in trouble, and so is your run game.
I totally agree with everything you just said. The fundamental problem is, the team had too many holes and too little draft picks and too little money.
Right.
If all things being equal, would they have rather had Andrew Norwell, at $13 million? Of course they would. But if they sign Andrew Norwell, well, the long-term domino effect of that is that Brandon Scherf may leave.
There goes everything else.
And so, but that having been said, there were guys out there they could have signed, and for whatever reason they didn't. Can't say I totally understand it, but it is what it is now, and so we'll just have to see how well it goes. I would have rather them.
We were talking.
I would have rather them do something, but hey.
We were talking a little about who's left on the scrap heap at this point, and the only name that stood out to me was Luke Keel, and I don't even think he's great, but at least he's not 40 years old like most of the other free agents left.
What's his name? Jakari Evans.
Yeah.
35 years old. I mean, Josh Laribas is on out there on the shelf to be purchased.
Right.
Want to return to Josh Laribas? Anybody?
Don't tempt us, Steve, because we'll do it. We will. Okay, so well, moving on from that then, because I mentioned Sean Laval, and that was not the person that I meant to bring up. Obviously, he's not the injured player that we had. Right. That would be Ari Quanjo. Yeah. Quadriceps. Another damn lower body problem. Redskins seem to have an epidemic of these. How does this news hit you guys?
I like Ari Quanjo as a depth backup guy. I think he's improved. I thought I saw better things out of him last year than I had in years past. So I think he's getting better. I think he's, we interviewed him what, 2 years ago, a year ago. Yeah, I mean, he struck me then as a pretty serious guy, kind of dedicated to his craft and to get better, and I think he has. It's a shame we lost him. Was he going to start and become a star? No, but he could have been quality depth, I think, and now he's not. So I'm upset for him personally. But I think the team will lose out long-term in depth because of him, because of his loss.
Now, is it guaranteed that he's out for this full season? Do we know that yet?
Jay Gruden addressed this in his press conference Friday. I don't have the quote right in front of me, but the gist of it was what Jamal said, which is we don't know. The guess is torn quad. He has an MRI scheduled, or either that or it's been done and it's being read, and we're waiting on the results.
Right. But
if it's a torn quad, then it's 8 to 12 months, and he's basically, you're talking IR.
Right,
yeah.
You're talking IR, and I mean, I even heard somebody say, a lot of guys retire after something like that.
Really?
So,
because that's a shame, because Ari Quanjo's brother, Cyrus Quanjo, has had some personal issues going on, and
Wait, how old is Ari?
26.
Yeah, he's not old.
26.
Yeah.
Okay, so he's super young
guy.
Well,
he was a
still,
rookie when we interviewed him, so I mean, he can't be more than 25, 26 years old.
Yeah, he's got to just be a couple years in. Okay. Well, we are also another man down. This would be in reference to Mr. Sean Welsh. What do you guys think when you see a guy at the onset of his career elect to retire out of football? Are you as surprised by that as I am, just at the sheer opportunity that's being foregone there?
The one thing that always catches my eye is I want to know how you retire from a job with ever actually doing it.
Right.
You've said this before on the show.
It really bugs me a lot. You can't retire if you haven't done it, people. Okay, you quit.
Steve does not like the idea that rookies can retire.
Rookies can't retire. Rookies can leave football, but I'm retiring from football. But you know what? You didn't actually play football at a professional level, so you're not retiring. But beyond that, I mean,
that's fair.
The backstory to Welsh is that he has publicly disclosed his battle with depression while he was in college at Iowa, and I don't know if that's related. I'm assuming his departure from football is related to that. Some of you out there were counting on Welsh to be a significant contributor. If that was your plan, I'd suggest you need a new plan because don't count on an undrafted free agent rookie to do anything. He might not even have made the team. But best of luck to him.
Yeah.
And all I can say is, we move on.
Yeah. I mean, he said that he put out a whole post of why he's decided he doesn't want to play anymore, and it basically is he doesn't feel like he's passionate about it, so why take up the spot if he's not going to give 100%? That's fine. All right, move on. Good luck to you. I hope your college degree was in something useful. That's all I would say.
Was he was not like when he graduated? When he left?
I think so.
I believe so. Yes.
Okay, yeah, that's good for him then. Or he could just go back to school if he hasn't. But yeah, I don't think there's much else to say. I didn't know if he put out a post for Alice. You just said he did.
He was on Instagram on his Instagram page.
Yeah, so it's really nothing else to it. Hopefully he can. If he hasn't finished school, he could go back, finish it, and go on about his business. There's a lot of things you could do too from just being considered a pro athlete. I mean, personal training is right down his alley if he wants to. So he does, shoot flag football. Look, it's some professionals playing flag. Well, former playing flag football, and you can play that till you 55. So I mean, if you want to do it on the side and coaching, high school, anything like that. If you want to do anything on the side, you got opportunities. So he was honest.
Yeah, he can make a living at it.
So he was honest. He has a plan. I'd assume. I'd imagine. So best of luck to him.
Yep.
Yeah. I can certainly understand, too. I mean, last note I'd say on him is if it's a depression thing, which I didn't see in his post, but if it is, I can totally understand. That's a real hard thing to get high energy and work out all the time and stay in peak physical performance if you're dealing with those demons. So best of luck to you, Sean, and disappointed, you won't stick with the team. But, hey, that's what happens
Another
sometimes.
Sean who flaked out.
Another Sean flake, man. I wonder if he also shares my chronic lateness and procrastination.
But he's an
problem.
SHAW.
In addition to the depression.
SEA, so.
Oh, okay. Well, never mind.
No, he's an SEA. He's an OG.
Okay.
He does it right, man. He does it right. Okay, well, let's move on from there. Alex, you just sent a note over that actually is a probably good thing for us to discuss real quick because it's related to all of this, which would be a shakeup at in the Redskins front office there, right? Lead scout position there.
Yeah.
It's Scott Campbell is out,
17 years with the team, 31 years as a scout in the NFL, and they didn't fire him. His contract expired, and they decided not to renew him. Scott Campbell, I mean, it's hard to get broken up about this guy. It's funny, every time someone like this leaves, the press is like, oh, he was a great guy, he was a nice guy. You never once mentioned him.
Yeah, who cares? I'd never heard of him. And also, I can't believe that our head of college scouting was that good for the last 17 years. I mean,
right.
Give me a break. Like, I'm surprised he had the job
Well,
for that
part of it is that
No offense,
I think
Mr.
Alex Smith is, meaning not the quarterback, but the front office guy, is a
Kyle
favorite
Smith,
of Doug
not
Williams.
Alex.
Kyle Smith is a favorite of Doug Williams, and sort of the plan is to promote Kyle Smith.
Right.
Well, as to what effect this, has, I have no idea whatsoever. Like Alex said, I mean, based on our draft results over the years, I can't imagine that Scott Campbell is losing, Vince Lombardi or something.
No, I mean, everyone always kind
Right.
of defends these guys, saying that Vinny never listened to him, and Mike Shanahan really ignored his scouts. He was all about finding highlight films and watching them.
He was his own scout.
Watching it himself, that kind of stuff. But even if those are true, like at some point, if I were Scott Campbell, I would be like, well, if no one's listening to me, I'm going to go somewhere else.
Well, I think things have changed now, right?
Hopefully a little.
It appears as though they're in a good place. Well, I mean, Doug Williams doesn't have that ego issue.
No.
Jay Gruden doesn't have the authority within the organization to dictate anything. So, I mean, I think the scouting department's in a pretty good place.
Mm-hmm.
I think Doug Williams has done a pretty good job so far.
It's just in a constant state of flux, Steve. 2 years ago, the situation was totally different on who's picking talent and looking at, the players to acquire. It's always changing with this team. That's the only concern I have with it.
Question. So, now that we know what we know, and remember when we started to realize things were going south with McCoon, one of the things was the Redskins didn't let him bring in his own scouting staff. Or we kept our own department.
See? Exactly.
Have you guys ever wondered, well, now that we know what we know again, have you guys ever wondered that this is the reason why? Because they knew if they got rid of some of the talent that they had in-house, things, they would have really regretted it down the road.
Maybe, yeah. I think Scott McGowan was always a bit overrated. At least by the public.
Yeah, by the public. Sure. I give you that.
Maybe. I think what you're getting at. I think what I hear you getting at is that keeping the scouting staff they were comfortable with in place was a hedge against Scott McGowan's drinking coming back to haunt him and interfering with his job performance. Is that what you're saying?
We can't spread the drinking rumor. We don't know if that's even true.
Yeah.
Well, I'm going to say it because I like being provocative. I mean, the point here is that they hired a guy who's an alcoholic who continues to drink.
That's salacious.
No, it's
Steve.
that he said
You
it
can't
in
say
his
that.
ESPN article. He said he had a
He said he was
he
an
said he had a
alcoholic,
drinking problem,
and that was affecting
He
his.
said he had a drinking problem, but he thinks he could handle it, and that's why he continued to drink. He told ESPN that in the big ESPN profile 2 years ago, and so based on that, the Redskins hired him. Fine, but I wonder if keeping guys like Scott Campbell and Kyle Smith and everybody else in place was a hedge against that.
I'm sure that was part of it. I'm
drinking.
sure they didn't. I'm also.
And I'm not saying he was drinking at the Redskins either. There's all sorts of rumors, and we've talked about that before. We heard those rumors ourselves. I don't know what the truth was, but I wonder if part of it was a hedge.
It probably was, but at the same time, I also think we know Dan Snyder is cheap when it comes to this behind the scenes stuff. We've talked about that quite a bit.
This is absolutely
true. I'm sure
true.
he didn't want to fire a bunch of guys who are on contract and have to pay them. Like, if Scott Campbell had a 2-year deal, I don't know how often these guys get it renewed, if it's annual or every couple years, but he probably wouldn't want to fire somebody and have to pay him out,
Probably not. Yeah, probably not.
That's a good point.
That sounds right.
I don't know. I just wondered it because, for him to not be able to bring his staff on, and then knowing that the Redskins were very high on Kyle, you just kind of wonder, like, what if I figured they may have known something, or they may have wanted those two to work together and make this entire situation work. Meaning, Kyle, Scott, and McLuhan. So who knows? I
just think if you look at McLuhan's drafts, I mean, the fact of the matter was, I don't think they were very good. He had a lot more misses than he did hits.
Yeah, but
See, that's true.
But I think the whole thing about Kyle Smith is very interesting. That they're now saying he's like the front office Sean McVay. That they're like worried about losing.
Well, that's Eric Schaefer. Is another one like that. I mean, Eric Schaefer, who's
but
the
Eric,
capologist.
No, he's a front office like business side, but not a scout. Kyle's the
I'm saying I'm agreeing. I'm saying Eric Schaefer's the other guy they have. That's what I'm saying.
Their golden boy.
Yeah.
Eric Schaefer's also in his 50s,
Steve
not
just
30s, so there's that factor too.
You can't call him a golden boy then, I guess, in that case? A golden man? Okay, so Steve just said something. I thought this was interesting. You don't have to give too much detail on this, but Alex and Jamal, do you think McLuhan was overrated?
In hindsight, I would say probably overrated by the fans. Except for one thing, which I will stand by, that he did that still isn't done right by the team, and that is he had a vision of what kind of football team he wanted to build, and everything was geared towards defense and, strength
identity
over speed and glitz,
So I think
Absolutely.
just off the strength, I won't do the hindsight thing, but I agree with Alex. But just I think that he was overrated by the fans. I think even at the time, I think he was overrated by the fans because a lot of fans assumed, because he was coming in, that he would be 90% hit, 10% miss. You won't really worry about the misses because his hits are going to be great. Things like that. So
we all were thinking of Seattle.
I think at
and
the
all
time,
that.
I think people thought he was over. I thought people were overrating him, and that's not necessarily disrespectful towards Scott, but more so the fact that people assumed he was something more than what he was, but understood that GMs more oftentimes you're not really going to be you're not going to really hit more than you miss. Like you have to find those the players that you do hit on. They have to be like outstanding or at least very good role players. So that's how I feel it is. I think the best draft that the Redskins had under Jay Gruden was the 2014 draft, and I mean it proved to be come true. Seeing as how we know all the players. I can't remember off the top of my head right now because we're talking about something else. But the 2014 draft, you had at least all of them except for a couple, literally one or two, were not contributors to the team. The other, 6, 7, I don't know. They were all contributors in some shape or form. So
they saw playing
time.
And who was in charge of that draft?
That was Bruce Allen.
Right.
So it's kind of impressive, but at the same fact, you look at 15 and 16, and you think there's literally just a few, probably on one hand, where you said that they were contributors and they played a huge factor to the team.
Yeah, I'm gonna have two things to add to that. Is number one, Scott McGowan's own wife puts out on social media that Scott himself is the best talent evaluator in the business.
Right.
So he's perpetuating that stereotype, and if he wanted to tell Jessica to stop doing that, he would, and he doesn't. And so
no man can control his wife.
Believe me, I know that more than I know that more than most. Believe me. And but the point is, he could sit her down and say you got to stop, and he hasn't done that.
Right.
Number one. And
That's true.
And No, I forgot. I had such a great second point. I can't remember what it is. Dang it! It's
Sean
one of the. It's escaping me.
He literally stopped you with a one-liner.
He did. He stopped me with the one-liner. I can't remember what the other point was at all. So move on. And
I can never remember my good points. That's why everything I say is so stupid in this show. All right. Well, before we move on to the running backs, because I think this is kind of interesting, just give me a quick one. Mike Shanahan, then overrated.
Are we talking as a
I need some
scout?
context.
As a talent evaluator, as a drafter, as a talent evaluator?
I think he equaled expectations.
Yeah,
Okay,
I think
fair
he knows
enough.
what he wants.
Jamal says a little over.
And he got what he wanted. It's just what he wants doesn't necessarily fit with every team. With the zone blocking linemen and all that stuff. And I know what it was. I know what my point was. I did that study about 3 months ago about the success of the drafts of Shanahan, Allen, and McGloin. And the truth of the matter is, Shanahan had a bunch of hits, and McGloin had the least amount of hits, and he had the most amount of misses. That was what I was going to say.
Shanahan's
That's an
weakness,
interesting.
though,
That's kind of what brought all this
the
up.
first round. He hit everything in the first round outside of RG3 really well.
Yeah.
It was the later stuff he struggled with.
Yeah, I mean, think about it, guys like Jordan Reed and Kirk Cousins. I mean, I know it didn't work out here, but those were both Shanahan.
That was
picks.
my point. Yeah, that's exactly the point.
Alfred Morris too.
So if you were going to rate him,
exactly.
I agree with Jamal in saying 2014 was probably the best draft that we've had in a while, and that's Bruce.
Yeah.
It's Bruce Allen.
Well,
and this draft seems pretty good too so far. It's early, and this is a Bruce Allen draft.
but I mean,
I like 17 and 18, but we'll see how it goes. Go ahead,
regarding the 14 draft, though, given that we let basically every bit of talent we drafted walk, except for Morgan
that's
Moses.
another issue, though. Yeah, that's another issue.
To me, I've always said that was an A+ draft, but you just got a D.
I wouldn't go
because
A
you let
quite that far.
Well.
I wouldn't go A+.
But by our
all.
standards, yes.
By our standards, it was a golden.
But by normal
draft.
NFL standards,
beautiful.
I'd call it about a B. But I mean, it was a good draft.
See, you got 3 starters, you got 2 real contributors. That's a really good day.
We've had this debate in writing before, Alex. I mean, I just don't see it as an A+ draft.
All right. Well, can we agree that it's a big old failure that you only kept one guy?
No,
I'll agree with that. I'll endorse that statement.
I don't know.
Steve's going to be a stick in the mud about it, but I'll endorse that statement, Alex. All right, well, let's move on then. So we have our position group breakdowns, folks. This is obviously something we do every year.
# content.
This week, we've got running backs to talk about. So let's do that. This is an exciting year for running backs, whereas most years are not exciting years for running backs with this team. So, Steve, take us away. Tell us, give us a little intro to our running back.
Okay, how these things are going to work is on these position group breakdowns, we're going to look at the position group for each week. We're going to pick a different position group, and we haven't quite planned it out this year as to the order yet, but we will. But we're starting with running backs. So what we do is we're going to go take an in-depth look at every player and see what the Redskins have. So we'll start with Darius Guice this year, and Jamal wrote a piece on this, and so I'd like to give Jamal the floor before I start going on and on about numbers, because I have all the numbers and everything. But Jamal, just give us an overview of your thoughts on the position group.
Well, the running back, I think, is going to be one of the few interesting camp battles this off season and training camp. Mainly because this year we actually know. Well, technically last year we knew too, but it was kind of like we were just again staying afloat. They weren't necessarily true. Primary backs, it was Rob Kelly, and then you had Samaje Perine. It was a battle between those two. This year we have Chris Thompson and we have Darius Guice. Those are the two best running backs that we have on the roster by far. And Darius Guice is the main ball carrier. Like, he's a primary back. He's I don't know. I wouldn't call him an all-purpose back just yet. We have to see what he can do in the passing game. But at the same time, we know who the 2-down back is for sure. Under him and under Chris Thompson is where you have meat and bones of the position. You don't necessarily know what the depth chart is going to look like. Samaje Perine had, because of injuries, had an extensive role at the position and as the number 1 running back after the Saints game, which was week 11-ish, around that time. So you have a good picture of what he can do as a running back, and he still has to improve some. But then you have Byron Marshall, you have Keith Marshall, You have Capri Bibbs. You have
Capri Bibbs, saw a
other
little
one
bit of
I'm
him
thinking
last
of?
year.
Rob Kelly.
Rob
You haven't
Kelly.
mentioned Rob
Oh
Kelly.
my goodness, Rob Kelly. And then you have one more other person that I cannot think of.
Keith Marsh. He's Byron Marshall
Yeah,
and then Keith
I
Marshall.
said Byron, Keith, Capri, Rob, Samaje, and then it's another running back, but I can't think of his name right now.
Well, we added
the guy they signed,
Carter.
Martez Carter.
Yeah.
I mean Carter, and it's another running back. I think I listed him in the piece that we had.
Well, I think when you wrote the piece, was Dare still on the team? Dare,
Daria, no, he's been gone for a while. Let's go over this, since we're having a debate. The guys on the roster right now are Capri Bibbs, Martez Carter, Darius Guice, Rob Kelly, Byron Marshall, Keith Marshall, Samaje P. Ryan, Chris Thompson, and then the fullback Elijah Wellman. Those are the running backs on the roster, and then there were one or two others.
We have a fullback.
Yeah,
on this
well,
team?
I mean, he's
a rookie,
undrafted free agent rookie. And then there were a couple other of the tryout guys.
Okay, so the guys that I'm thinking of just probably not on the roster anymore. But point is, like, you have the fight for the third running back position and the fourth running back. Odds are Samaje, because he was a 4th round draft pick, technically and correct at the same time. He is a high investment at the position, and he's also a draft pick where you don't really give up on him the second year in. So he is the favorite for the third position, the third spot on the depth chart. And the third spot on the depth chart is likely to spell back. He's presumably going to be backing up Guice and maybe Chris Thompson from time to time. Even though you can find a better backup for Chris Thompson, but he's like, that's what that third running back is going to be there for. And then that's where you come in the fourth, and that's the reason why this position is going to be interesting, because believe it or not, you're going to need 4 running backs. You don't just rely on the top 2 because they're your best 2. You do use a lot of running backs in any shape, like special teams or in the offense itself. So that's mainly why one of these positions is going to be very interesting in my opinion.
I'd like to start with Darius Guice because he's the big name. I've been touting, those of you who follow, what I've written and said in various formats know I love this guy.
Everyone seems to love him.
Okay. Allow me to throw a little bit of cold water on it, just because we have to be honest on this show. The thing that concerns me about Guice is that he played 3 years at LSU, didn't get a lot of carries in his first year, finally, 51 attempts. Averaged 8.5 yards per attempt on those 51 carries. And that's, about 2 games worth total of carries, right? For LSU at least. 2016, 183 attempts, 7.6 yards per carry. He really fell off a cliff in 2017, only averaged 5.3 yards per carry. And if you look at, if you pull his game logs, because I'm just enough of a stats nerd to do this, and look at all of his games, he just demolished Mississippi. 276 yards against Mississippi, 12.5 yards per carry. BYU, 122 yards. Arkansas, 147 yards. Alabama, 71 yards, 3.7 yards per carry.
Not a good day, but you're going against Alabama. That's not terrible.
Auburn, 3.6 yards per carry on 20 attempts. Florida, 2.9 yards per carry on 20 attempts. Now, LSU wasn't nearly as good last year. They were only 10 and 13. So,
plus, this is what happens after a standout year, Steve. I mean, isn't it? People key in on you and they know what to expect.
What you want in elite level running backs out of college is you want their yards per carry to be in the 6 range. And he was at 6.5 overall. I'm just giving the devil's advocate here. I love this guy. I think he's great.
No, that's fair.
The devil's advocate is that you kind of have to hope that he's not, that whatever was going on in 2017 is over, and we're going to see the 2016 Darius Guice, the guy who put up 285 yards on Texas A&M.
Right.
That's but what I see that's numbers for Guice. And we all know his backstory. He's gotten a pretty incredible backstory. I don't want to go over that again.
Yes.
5-star,
Personal story,
5-star recruit out of high school, all that. What I see out of Guice is a guy who runs with a lot more power than you might expect for somebody who's only 220 pounds.
Right.
He's a violent runner. He's not necessarily going to juke you out of your socks like Barry Sanders. He can do some of that, but he is violent, and he's going to attack you. He's going to try to run over the linebacker, and in college he was able to do that. So we have to hope that that is going to continue. And I also think he's probably a better receiver than we might let on than you might think, but reality says that Chris Thompson's going to get most of those. So that's Guice.
Sure.
You guys have anything else to add, or else I'm going to move on?
What I will say is, if he does turn out to be the pass catcher or playmaker in the passing game that some think he is, but hasn't been able to show at LSU, then I do expect the role or I expect the role just to change a little bit for him, and that kind of affects Chris Thompson in a way, but I do expect the role to change for him because we can use him on any given down. So that's it.
And I will. The one thing I'll add that I've heard a lot of good things about him is his run blocking is actually pretty solid for a rookie, which is usually
nice.
Rookies are terrible.
We need that too.
At run blocking or not run. I'm sorry, pass blocking, not run blocking, of course.
Yeah,
we knew what you meant.
Yeah.
That's pretty critical. I gotta say, guys, of everything you guys just said, I'm really excited about the 1-2 punch of Thompson and Guice. I think it's going to be a great situation. Sorry, Steve.
No, it's okay. I mean, and listen, I think Guice has the potential to be one of the great Redskins running backs. And because, quite frankly and honestly, if you look at the history of Redskins running backs, we don't have a lot of great running backs. The list is fairly short, which is kind of
for a running team.
For a running
That's
team,
probably maybe 4.
Well, yeah, you got Chris Thompson, or I'm sorry, you got Clinton Portis, John Riggins, Ernest Biner. Who else?
If you want to go way back, Cliff Battle, Stephen Davis was.
Well, Stephen Davis, and then there was one more in the '90s. Someone helped me in early '90s. We had one more.
I know
who was good for a couple years.
Can't remember.
Yeah, and that's fine.
And
we have Charlie
baby food, man.
And we have Charlie Taylor, guys like that, and who's the other one? And it's in the Hall of Fame. But point is, for a running team, there's not a lot of them. I think Darius Guice, if he puts up 4 or 5 outstanding years, he's going to be up on the list. But let's talk Chris Thompson, 5'8", 190. Chris Thompson is our third down back, who the Redskins last year, out of an utter lack of other playmakers, tried to turn him into our primary playmaker, and it didn't work out.
Hey, Doc Walker said it was fine to do. He told me that Chris Thompson could be the every down guy.
Except that he got hurt.
And I agree. I think he
that
still
was
can
the story
be,
of everyone.
We just know the injury issue and his size. That's all. But he can.
Well,
yeah.
He ain't going to hold up
now,
for 16 games.
Oddly enough, he had 64 carries last year, 294 yards, 4.6 yards per attempt. He only had 68 carries in 2016, so he was actually, and he only played in 10 games versus 16, so he was headed towards a career year for himself. But I think what you see is the drop-off in his yards per attempt as his carries rose.
Yeah.
2015, 6.2 yards per carry. 2016, 5.2. 2017, as he got more and more, 4.6 yards per carry, which is still outstanding. But his effectiveness, I thought, was more and more limited as defenses keyed on him more and more. And so that's the problem with Thompson and obviously the injury situation. I think Thompson is best used in the Brian Mitchell role, which is the sort of all-purpose guy, come in, do anything, need a playmaker, catch a pass, do something on third down. I think that is how Chris Thompson should be best used.
There's been some talk that I've seen from guys like Bullock, who we're all fans of, and I've wondered about this too. Moving Thompson into basically the fourth wide receiver role when Guice is out there, and utilizing his ability in the slot as like another receiver. What do you guys think about that this year?
Not opposed to it.
I mean,
I don't know how Chris Thompson's route running is. There's a difference between running backs,
kicking out to the
running
flat,
backs catching passes, and a slot guy who's going to run, deep routes, deeper out and in routes, post routes. I don't know if Thompson is good at that or not.
Sure.
That's not really what we saw out of him.
Yeah, I mean, most of what he was doing was screens and flat routes.
Yeah, right.
Yeah, I mean, I think we know that Gruden is very good with multiple running backs, 2 different styles of running backs in the same system. We've seen that in other teams he's been with. I'm really excited for what the opportunity of Guice and Thompson together brings, because I feel like that's something Jay has experience with and is very good with.
Could be kind of a Mr. Inside, Mr. Outside sort of thing going,
Exactly. I'm not opposed. I just really like the idea of them both being heavily
I
used
like
in
that.
the
I like the idea of putting them both on the field at the same time to make it harder for defenses to key on anybody.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
He's shown his ability to do it, so.
Samaje Perine. Is everybody done with Thompson? Jamal, you have anything else to add on
No,
Thompson?
I'm good with Thompson.
All right, let's talk about Samaje Perine. Now, I felt when I was preparing for this episode, I had it in my head that maybe I didn't give Samaje enough of a shot last year. I bashed him pretty regularly on this show. And so I went back and watched a good amount of his All-22 film on it. And I will get to the numbers here in a minute. But what I saw in the All-22 film is a little bit of everything from him. I saw a guy who was a victim of a lot of atrocious blocking. Mm-hmm. Thanks Morgan Moses, thanks right guard. Right. I mean, those guys whiffed on a bunch of blocks, which caused a decent number of his 1 yard gains and, negative gains were because of that. Because he was getting annihilated by defensive ends, thanks to Morgan Moses and the right guard primarily, but occasionally Brandon Scherf. But I also saw a guy who didn't really have the burst. I'm not talking about upper end speed. I'm talking about burst and cutting ability. Mm-hmm. He doesn't really have the burst and cutting ability to take advantage or the vision to see every hole. He sees some of them, but he doesn't see all of them. And the ones he does see, sometimes he just doesn't have the athletic ability to get through it. Where if you had a guy at the upper end, like Clinton Portis,
right,
had the burst to do it, whereas Samaje really doesn't. So I think, and he makes the occasional bad decision. So I think it's not his failure last year to really kind of grab a hold of the position wasn't all on him. And I think I probably put too much of it on him when we were doing the live show, post-game shows and everything. But I don't think he has the ability to really be the number one back from an athletic standpoint. So I guess that's what I concluded on Samaje. And let me just give the numbers real fast, and then I'll be done. Last year he ran for 603 yards on 175 yards rushing, 3.4 yards per carry, 22 receptions on 24 targets, 182 yards, and he had one rushing touchdown, one passing touchdown. His best stretch of games was week 10 and week 11. Or that was week 11, week 12, the Saints and the Giants game. 117 yards and 100 yards, 5.1 yards per attempt and 4.2 yards per attempt. That was his best stretch, and other than that, it was a lot of dreck. So, thoughts on Perine?
Well, I think you pretty much hit the nail on the head, at least in terms of where my thoughts are on him. He's going to take what's given to him or what's obviously available probably 8 out of 10 times. He's going to make something out of nothing, maybe 1 out of 10 times. It's not necessarily an indictment on him, but I think Guice, like you said, is going to have some more of those traits and abilities to make something of it when the play is a little bit blown than he does. It's not really I hate to bash him too, kind of like you said, but there's better guys on this team at this point, I would suspect, having not seen Guice yet.
I mean, my feeling is what I want him to be is not what he's going to be, and what I wanted was somebody who can be this short yardage situational guy. It's 3rd and 1, get that 1 yard. I don't care what you get after that, but get the 1 yard, and he just doesn't have that, which is a shame because he's got the body for it, but I don't know if he's, ever going to have. I don't know how you go about getting that burst that you're talking about, Like, I think you either have it or you don't.
I mean, force is mass times acceleration. Right. So, you can have the mass, but unless you have the burst, you're not going to have the power. And so I don't think he really has the burst. Jamal, what do you think?
I'm about to say, and what you can do, no, you're not wrong. But what you can do for Samaje, a guy who's he's pushing 240, if I'm not mistaken.
235,
you got to, first off, lose some weight to help yourself out. You can still pack a punch if you lose a little bit of weight. You could drop down to 229ish, 230 tops. But at the same time, just lose some weight but gain some explosiveness. It's the same thing Rob Kelly did last year. You can pack on some muscle, still losing some weight, but you just got to do it a different way. If you work out, you know how, just lose some weight then pack on the muscle. Anyway, you could gain some explosiveness that way. But it's for Samaje, it's 1 year. And the reason why I do that for a running back like him is he has to fit a specific role. And there's frankly no other place to be honest, there's no really other place for him on the roster except for you to get it right. And for him to get it right, he has to become that role where he's a spell back, he's that power back that the Redskins need. And we'll see how it goes. Personally, like I said, Steve, you're not wrong. But he it's 1 year. He has to get his stuff together. And we'll see how it goes for him. So it's not over yet. But you just got to see how he runs when preseason comes.
Yeah.
And he would have been better with better blocking. There's no doubt. I mean, look.
The
guy ran this. Yeah, this guy ran for 427 yards against Kansas. As a freshman. So I mean, he has it in him. We'll see. Rob Kelly. I wrote a piece on Rob Kelly 2 years ago, and one of my "what's the deal with Rob Kelly" really things.
You had a bit of a crush on him his rookie year too.
Well, yeah, but the problem, and he was doing well as a rookie. He had a stretch of 3 games, really 4 out of 5 games where he was outstanding. Yeah. Cincinnati, Minnesota, Green Bay, and Arizona, averaged 5.7 yards per carry against Green Bay, 137 yards. The problem was last year it really tailed off dramatically. Just didn't do well before he got hurt. He didn't keep it up. My conclusion in the what's the deal with really thing was that he has the background and the history to suggest he could be a solid back but not a great back. And I think that may be what we're seeing out of him. He's 230 pounds himself. He's a big guy. I don't think that he has the innate ability to become Adrian Peterson, anything like that. He could be a solid backup, maybe a decent mid-level starter, but I think that's probably his ceiling.
Yeah.
So, thoughts on Kelly?
I can't really disagree with anything you just said. I'm pretty much right there with you.
I think his 2 years with the Redskins is about as much he'll get when it comes to this team. You got to see what he does in preseason, but more so, you got to see how much he performs in preseason, because I think he will be one of the roster cuts, and he'll have to use that film from preseason to find another spot on another team's roster. I don't think he'll be able to last much longer with the Redskins
unless he dramatically outperforms Samaje Perine.
Yeah,
I think that's his chance.
I personally, I don't know. I personally don't. I give him a chance, but I don't see him winning that battle. And also, you got to think Capri Bibbs is impressive for the little time that he was here.
Yeah. Finished pretty strong.
Bibbs, and then also Keith Marshall is a draft pick. He's only 24 years old. He lost the last 2 seasons due to injury, but and this is not an if and buts. But I'm just saying for the simple fact that when he steps on the field this time, barring injury, he will have a chance. He will have a fighting chance to make the roster as well as the fourth-round.
Yeah. Right.
So.
Well,
and Rob Kelly cut his hair. If you guys didn't notice, so he shaved all his hair off.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
maybe he lost about 10 pounds
straight to business
with all the dreads gone.
It feels to me like Rob Kelly and Samaje Perine are both battling out for that same job. Neither of them have ever really stood out on special teams that I can recall. So they're both battling to be that, larger backup running back, and you don't need 3 of them or 2 of them at this point. You really just need the one with how this roster's built.
Okay, Capri Bibbs.
Yeah.
Capri Bibbs, 5'11", 200.
Sprinkling of action.
He is from Colorado State, spent some time at Denver, and, I thought he played well last year, but if you look at his numbers, top drawer and, sorry, having a little distraction here, 47 yards, 26 yards, 6 yards, he didn't look that good. He has a shot. I thought he looked well, but all the same, I don't think we need to count on Capri Bibbs to be something great.
No, probably not. I mean, the one thing that I think people liked about him was he kind of had that burst that we were at least talking about, and he came in at a time when we were just desperate for anybody. So I think fans just kind of get overwhelmed when they see that. But the one thing I'll give him, decent hands. He, I think, finished with more receiving yards than rushing yards. Less. Yeah.
Nice. I didn't know that. I mean, he certainly showed some speed and athleticism. We'll have to see what happens in the next few months.
Yeah.
Not really ready to make a call on Bibbs either way, but promising in the little action I guess we've seen.
Where we're going to be on a lot of these guys who are not Guice or Thompson. We'll see what they all do in preseason, right? I mean, yeah.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong. It's going to be they're going to have to earn their own spots after this. No one else is safe.
I personally think it comes down to one of the few final. Well, it'll come down to probably Bibbs, P. Ryan, and one of the two Marshalls for sure. I don't know about. I think if anything, Carter has a chance at a practice squad spot, but that's about it. I don't even think you keep a running back on a practice squad. To be honest with you, I think.
Can we talk about Martez Carter real fast? Let's talk about Martez Carter. I watched some Martez Carter film. Martez Carter is the poor man's Chris Thompson.
Mm-hmm.
A little bit, maybe a tiny bit bulkier. He was up to 217 pounds apparently at one point this offseason. He is known as a very agile guy with a lot of burst. He doesn't have a ton of high-end speed. He only ran a 4.5, 640, 9.1 broad jump. So he's not a tremendous athlete, but he is known as an exciting runner.
Mm-hmm.
What Lance Zierlein writes, extremely sudden in his movements, has strong burst to beat defenders to a corner. He also reminded me a little bit of kind of a poor man's Barry Sanders in the way he runs. Not that he's going to be Barry Sanders, but the way he runs the football and tries to juke you out of your socks. That's Martez Carter. I think he has potential, and I think Doug Williams probably knows him very, very well. Yeah. So of all these guys, that we're kind of bringing.
He might be a sleeper.
I actually agree with that, and I wrote a little thing about the whole special teams that we talked about that, but Carter had 2,000 kick return yards, and we're desperate for anybody we can, to return the football. So to me, that gives you a bit of an inside shot at that fourth roster spot for running back, because we'll probably keep 4 like last year.
Sign him now if he can return the ball. Just sign him now.
Man, you might change your tune if you see Stroman or the receiver.
Trey Quinn.
Stroman and Quinn both also are up there. Yeah, don't get me wrong. I mean, I think.
Oh no, I was talking about Sean talking about sign me up. I was like, hey, he might change his mind when he see them.
No, it's true. We got some speed on this team.
They were desperate for another returner.
It's pretty obvious that the Redskins are going all out to get another returner, no matter what Jay Gruden says. Yeah. Because they asked Jay this past Friday, and Jay kind of said, Jameson's still the starter, but
I'm about to say, there's we do not need
no one wants to see that.
Paul and Rashad Breeland returning any more kickoffs. None of that. Nope.
Well, Miles Paul's with Jacksonville now, so we're not going to see that.
Yeah, I'm just saying, we don't need no more tight ends or second string cornerbacks who only supposed to play cornerback returning kickoffs.
Right.
Did we? I mean, I know Jamal. You mentioned Keith Marshall kind of briefly. Keith is a guy who is a story of untapped potential. Right. He's incredibly fast, but he just is repeatedly over and over and over again been hurt. It's a real shame. He was Todd Gurley's running buddy, at Georgia. A real shame that he hasn't. It looks like his body just can't take the pounding or something. He's another sleeper because if he ever happens to be healthy, he's got so much speed that, if you have a lot of speed, you can always do well.
And he has the build that you want a running back to look like, I feel like. He
5'11", 212.
Like, he looks like just
low
the
center of
perfect running
gravity
back when you see him playing what little we saw him in preseasons ago. But, he just... The fact that he goes on IR after week 2 of preseason every year,
Yeah.
No.
Yeah, that's not going to do it. All right. Well, any other people we want to throw out there? Any other thoughts we want to throw out there? We are at about an hour.
Wellman, yes. Elijah Wellman is
who?
He is a undrafted free agent rookie fullback out of West Virginia, 6'1", 241 pounds. This dude barely carried the ball in college, okay? Only had a handful of rushing attempts, like 20, 30, 35 rushing attempts in college, and that was it. True fullback, true blocking fullback. So it's interesting that Jay brought him in. You know, you have to think this is a guy who will have to perform on special teams as well to make the team, obviously. But I'm also kind of tired of seeing tight ends play, line up at fullback for this team.
Especially a tight end
because Niles Paul did that.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, a tight end who's a wide receiver turned fullback is not something good. So, I mean, if Elijah Wellman can prove that he can contribute enough on special teams and Jay can get over his weird fullback hate, I think there could be a place for a guy like that. We'll see.
I mean, I've always said this. I've always looked at fullback the same way I looked at nose tackle, where, you might only need them for 5-10 plays a game these days. That's how the thing's built. But if you don't have them for those 5 or 10 plays, you're at a disadvantage.
Yeah. That's the problem. I mean, Jay is Mr. Versatility, though. And so, I mean, a guy like Elijah Wellman's going to have to be a special team stud, otherwise he's not going to be on the team.
With Paul gone, we need somebody who's kind of taking on that special teams role.
And that guy is Troy.
Yeah, I know. But Apke's a 200-pound safety, not a 230-pound tight end.
200, yeah, I agree. So I just wanted to make everybody aware of Elijah Wellman, because that's what we do on this show, is talk about obscure players who may not be around.
And there you go. Hey, they can always look to their 50 minutes of fame right here on the Hog Stye. So what's the position group for next week, Steve?
Well, quite frankly, we need to talk about it. So I can't really tell you because I haven't planned it out, and so we need to do that. And let's plan it out off the air.
Yeah, that's never a fun on the air topic.
No.
You don't need to hear that, folks. But I guess we'll suffice to say we'll come at you with a new position group next week.
For who they think is going to make it way too early?
Oh, yeah. We got to do that. Yeah, we got to do that. Well, since you brought it up, Alex, you can start first.
All right, because I actually know what mine... I'm going to give the easy two, which is Guice and Thompson are your 1-2 punch. I'm going to stay conventional, say Samaje gets the third spot, and then I'm going unconventional and saying Martez gets the fourth because of special teams.
Fair enough.
Okay.
Jamal, what do you think, man?
Samaje and I'll say Samaje and Capri. They fill out the Redskins running back position. So I'm gonna leave it with those.
Okay, and obviously you mean the top two.
Yeah, I was assuming
we can all agree that Darius Guice and Chris Thompson. Yeah. So the last two for me, I think Samaje gets another year here for sure. They're just not going to throw away a 4th-round draft pick, and I don't see any of these guys really wowing the team enough to boot him off the roster. And I'm going to go the same as Alex. I'm going to go say Martez Carter pulls it out. So Martez Carter as the fourth. And
nice.
I was about to say, just to be different, say Elijah Wellman makes it as a fullback. I don't know if I'm willing to go that far. So I'll leave that out. So Martez Carter and Samaje.
Okay. And I'm going to go with Jamal. I'm going to say Guice, P. Ryan, Thompson, and Bibbs. And the only reason I say that is Guice and P. Ryan kind of sort of similar, and Bibbs and Thompson sort of similar, I guess, in just body type. So you have two of each.
Martez and Bibbs and Thompson are all that same kind of guy.
They're all that mold. See, I just don't know enough about Carter.
I think the plan it looks to me like Jay and Doug are trying to find a replacement for Chris Thompson someday. Because we've had a bunch of guys who are Chris Thompson body type. He's on a big contract. When it runs out, maybe one of these guys, whether it's Capri's a little bigger, but, Byron Marshall is that size. Martez is that size. Maybe they're long-term, they're thinking...
They need another scat back,
Chris
basically.
Thompson.
Yeah. That makes sense. I mean, he's also been hurt pretty often. Thompson.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, something to think about, certainly. Okay. Well, we will let you all get back to your lives there. Obviously, we love being here with you, and we will be back again next week. This is The Hog Stye. Keep your eyes on the website, thehogsty.com, for more written content and position group breakdowns in written form. And other than that, we'll see you all later. Take care.
Don't be skeevy.
No, that is the theme. You gotta be professional.
Send nudes.
Yes. Don't do
All right,
that.
Sean, I'll send you my nudes.
Not again, Alex. I already have those.